Hello, Jeff. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'll figure out what voice to use as we go through this. You might hear it change a few times. Be like overexcited podcast voice, and then like, oh, what am I doing? And then like hyper excited again.
And then you'll get real introspective and
Yeah.
like you'll be talking like Morgan Freeman by the end of this one.
Oh, I was about to do an impression, but let's save that for everybody.
So we are talking today about a film that we've both seen, and I don't know how widely known the movie is. I know the cheeseburger scene went sort of viral. Some people
Mm.
might know the movie, but the film we are talking about is called The Menu. I've seen it three times now. How about you, Jeff?
I've seen it once in theaters with the New Zealand International Film Festival, which I think is coming
Oh,
up again soon, which breaks the chronological release of whatever this is.
yeah.
But saw it there, and then saw it just like a week ago when you and I were talking about this. But really quickly, I got to say, I'm so happy I saw it in the theater because it was one of those kind of indie-ish theaters, like a bit of an old one, and the vibe just felt perfect for that thing. Like just a handful of people in there who loved it to death. Just everything about that, like old seats, old popcorn, it felt perfectly in line with the theme of that movie.
Yeah, I'm so jealous of that experience you got to have because it does feel like that kind of movie you want to give your entire attention to. So I think that would have been a great way to take it in for the first time. It is definitely one of those films, a bit like The Prestige, where watching it a second time changes a lot of the dialogue. I think you
Yeah.
kind of hear it and things have double meanings and such on the second watch through. So definitely one that if you enjoyed it the first time, the second time I would say is maybe not better, but it's a different experience watching it the second time.
Yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, Prestige, Fight Club, all of the things with twists. It's like, because like my wife, she didn't really remember much, but I was like giddy the entire time because I was like, oh, I can't wait to see how you react to this thing happening. And then I didn't. Oh, well, so what is your take on spoilers on talking about this
So
for
I
everybody?
guess let's I think we're just going to go full spoilers.
Okay,
If you're
cool.
listening now and you're thinking I haven't seen it, go and watch it because we are going to get real deep into like the core, what we think the core themes of the movie are as artists. I guess perhaps we could give a quick synopsis of the movie to see if people want to watch it. So how would you even begin to describe the plot?
The plot
You
is
never
a
go.
fantastic art piece about food and the celebration of dining outside with others, the joyous camaraderie that a kitchen feels together in making delectable dishes for patrons to enjoy. Nothing goes wrong. It is very much an art piece. And if you are a foodie yourself, you'll love it to death.
Everyone just has a
I think
nice
that's
meal in
about
a
it. Yeah.
restaurant. Yeah. No, it's yeah, to describe it for someone who hasn't seen it, it's like the main I don't know, I consider him the main character, but I don't know if he actually is or not, but the main chef is sort of I see him as a little bit of a combination of like a Gordon Ramsay or a Marco Pierre White sort of celebrity chef, maybe a bit like a Bourdain before he went well, I think he did food TV and stuff, but he's like a super chef kind of character who has like become disillusioned with serving the rich and like upper class people who don't appreciate what he does. So he makes the really grounded and logical decision to have a final dinner service where each course is like a theme and it's basically ends with him wanting to kill everyone at the dinner. And that's about as far as I can go without getting into spoiler territory.
Well,
So,
you already said full spoiler, so I think we just go out and say it. And
uh,
I would argue it's not that he wanted to kill; he said they deserve to die. Much different take on these
that's
things.
fair. Yeah, no, you're right.
And I
And
realized as a bit of an explanation, like if I was pitching this movie retrospectively to like producers, I'd say it's like the modern day Seven. Like the movie Seven, it had all of the different what seven deadly sins, and this is kind of a version of that. Like there's characters that embody wealth, perfectionism. What is this like social status, fanboy, lust, power, people pleasing? So yeah, it's like it's all of that, and that's why it that theme does seem to be all of these should be like eradicated. Like you all have
mm,
taken this way too far. You've been self-obsessed. You've not noticed your own flaws. I've noticed them, but once I know that, I'm no longer ignorant of it. and we all don't deserve to be here.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very good way to surmise it, and I can't add anything to that. So, yeah, go and watch it if you haven't seen it. But I think as well, if you're an artist of any kind, a craftsman or an artist, you sort of see this movie in a interesting light. In that, this is what we wanted to talk about the movie for, is because I believe one of the lines that what is the character called, Margot.
Hmm.
Anya Joy Taylor, is that her name?
Anya Taylor Joy.
She she says to the chef that he doesn't cook with love anymore. He cooks with obsession, and I think that's another underarching theme of the movie, is that he's obviously very talented at his art form, but his obsession has taken it to the point where he almost hates doing it now. And we are two up and coming. Do you consider yourself a comedian, or are you more of an improviser?
Well, the problem about answering that, and I'm an overthinker for anybody who doesn't already know me, it's that I once heard somebody define a difference between comedian and comic, and unfortunately, I don't remember what that definition is. So I just have this problem in my head that I don't know how to solve because I don't know what the answer is.
Right, right.
So with that, with guessing, I'd still say comedian in the sense that still young at it all, like a year stand up or so, and then 2 years and whatnot of improvising and co-producing shows. But still, it's a broad spectrum. I don't like I'll just do whatever feels good at that moment.
Yeah. And I've been in stand up for about 9 years now. So allegedly approaching the point where you begin to know what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to knowing what that feels like for once. So yeah, we're very much up and coming. Well, I suppose maybe you're up and coming. I'm sort of in the middle somewhere. And this character, Julian Slowick, is like, he's got his 10,000 hours and he's in the sort of master stage of his craft. And we were thinking we'd talk today about what we observed from perhaps what were the pitfalls that he fell into and why they might seem like a good idea and an appealing idea for an up and coming artist, but actually ended up kind of isolating him more from people. So the first thing I'd like to get into is that the whole movie takes place on an island, and they are at a restaurant called Hawthorne, which is like a fine dining sort of establishment. And something that was quite cool about the menu on the title of the movie there. The menu is that all of the ingredients come from the island or the surrounding waters. So it's this kind of, I think biome was one of the characters uses the word biome to describe it. And on the island, all the chefs live there. They have like very military style bunks, lockers. And then Julian has his own little cottage on the island. So it seems like they never leave. They're just there. And one of the characters mentions that their day ends at 2 a.m. and starts at 5 a.m. or something. They were getting very little sleep to do their art form, which also feeds back into the idea of dedicating your life to something. These characters obviously are giving everything they have to their art form. But yeah, what are your thoughts off the bat about that idea of like living your craft?
Well, already the first thought that comes to mind, given this menu and given the parallels to comedy, both are professions that often, especially the fine dining kind of sides and stuff, that you don't get home until like 2 a.m. So just starting there, it's a professions of little sleep. You wake up early, or I guess wake up whenever you can, because if you're doing stuff late, you'll have to end up. Shops are still only open 9 to 5, and yet it doesn't matter how late your job goes. Now, I am not. You are the full-time comedian in doing things. I am not in that world. I walk in between both of them.
Well, that's the thing. Yes, if you're working a regular job, you almost are working 2 jobs. You're having your night job, and then you're going to sleep at midnight or whatever. Then to wake up at 6 to go to your regular job. So that burns you out like crazy.
Yeah, my obsession in that sense is that idea of exactly that. I'll stop the main one and then do things, whether it's posting or making videos and talking to people like yourself, making other dumb things for comedy, preparing other shows, running in shows. And I finally get myself a break at midnight and go, oh, I can rest now. So yeah, that's kind of obsession. Like we're making stuff, but we don't. Yeah, why are we making stuff?
Do you have this? do you ever have this experience of like you get home from like, because you would think that I live a relatively leisurely life, but I'm still doing a lot of stuff during the day and then going to these quiz nights and stuff. And then it's exactly like that. You get back from one of your gigs and you think like, oh, well, I've got to put in a couple of hours of making content. Because I think this is a big thing that comedians especially are facing at the moment is you have to be this like unfailing machine to produce content for the masses. And this podcast has come at a perfect time because I think yesterday I hit my peak of feeling burnt out of creating content. So I'm in exactly the right mindset to talk about this at the moment.
Yeah, we're like, let's schedule a thing to record more content and more things on your plate.
Well, trust me, this is the fun part for me. It's when it's a month down the line when I have to edit it, and that's when I would be a little demoralized, let's just say. Yeah. But the content machine, it is relentless, and it's almost like the analogy I can think of is like you're following a map, but you know, in video games that have that fog of war where you couldn't see what was ahead of you. Feels a bit like that, where everyone's telling you like, yeah, just post clips for like 3 years and just be consistent and post on the same days, and then it'll happen for you and you'll pop off. But you're sort of just walking into this fog of war going like, well, I hope I'm headed in the right direction, but I can't really tell. I can't really tell if it's working or not yet. And you just hit points. It's like that sunk cost fallacy. Sometimes you think like, is it too late to turn back? I just got to keep doing this, or do I need to stop for a bit and reassess what I'm creating? And just all these are the thoughts that keep me up late at night. Is what the hell am I doing?
And forcing the analogy of the whole restaurant side, I guess similar things like you open up your dream little cafe or whatever it is, but you don't really know how long it's going to take till maybe you can open up a second one or until it's profitable. How long to stay in it when, COVID and other things keep hitting, just nobody's in the cities anymore. Same as comedy in that sense. Like, how do we get people to shows? We keep making shows. We're consistent. So whether it's content online, content in person, we've got a monthly improv show that's wrapping up now. And it's like, well, keep making it. It's winter. Is winter the reason why less people are coming? Is it something else? How long do we keep doing this at a loss? And you never really know, but I guess it's still, you do it because you like it. Actually, real quick before I forget, the content side, the online content side, it does remind me, again, trying to force the movie in as much as I can, of the critics in the movie. When it's like Lillian Bloom and the other guy. And I think Chef Slovic at some point says something along the lines of that, of like, I kept doing this and kept doing things for you because I thought I needed your reviews and I thought I needed your engagement and your publicity. Basically like, oh, Taylor, you keep making videos online because that's the only way for you to ever get famous. You need me to help promote yours and repost your stuff, and you need your fans to share it. Otherwise, how are you ever going to get a job? And that's what burns him out in a way. So it's, in this sense of, wait, Taylor, I'm not like, there's no light like outside my door, right? Because it's like, the parallels here of somebody's getting burned out, they're tired, the disillusion. I know I've got my own obsessions. I hope there's no like trap waiting for me soon, giant marshmallows and things.
Yeah, this was what I was going to say. Actually, this podcast is going to end with both of our deaths, and I've got a nice marshmallow hat for you to wear. And
this is going to have to be like the Blair Witch, because if both of us go, there's nobody to actually edit it, and so we're not doing it live. So I guess somebody's going to have found footage of.
It's going to be a found footage podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
Does that exist? A found footage podcast? I don't think so.
That's a topic for off camera, because I have had an idea for that. But let's try and stick with the theme, because you've done a fantastic job of keeping to it while I haven't. But there was a line in the film where he said he spent his whole life trying to get the approval of people he didn't know, and I went like, oh, that's hitting a little too close to the bone for me there. I let that sit with me for a night or two. But like,
actually, I've got a thought on that. If you just on that part of doing things for people that you don't know, this is one of the biggest lessons that changed comedy for me in the past 2 months. And talking to Stephen Lyons, because he's like my mentor, and I co-produce a lot of shows with him.
Great guy, Stephen.
And hi, Stephen. He's on the shirt.
There he is.
we were doing the improv. He kept noticing like you're like holding back. You're trying to be that people pleaser. You're trying to help your directors out too much and help the audience out too much. He's like, he kept saying follow your joy, and I kept thinking I understood it, but the real meaning was like follow your own happiness, which led to like improvised stand up and stuff in the dice show of follow what makes you happy. Go to that thread, expand on those thoughts, you will find somebody who likes that. And that's where
Mhm.
it started connecting those dots that I've heard plenty of times. So if you've got a restaurant, do the thing that you like. It might not be like the major profitable thing. You might not have to be open every day of the week consistently. You might be open when you wanted. But if you do the thing that you love and it's your crafted little bit, there will be somebody out there in this niche world of the internet today where you can find anything for anybody. Keep doing it at your speed. Do what makes you happy. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So for you, if you're feeling burned out, like we've talked about a few times for some of the clips you're doing, you know what? Yes, the fast track might be to every day post a thing, the same consistency, find
Yeah.
followers, but also if that burns you out, then you're not getting anywhere. So you might as
Mm-hmm.
well just do what you like, and then by doing that, you're going to have more fun. If you have more fun, everybody else is going to have more fun, and that's where the organic growth kind of happens.
Yeah,
In theory.
exactly. Yeah, it's always theoretical, isn't it? I
Mm.
was gonna say the tricky thing about something like entertainment is you are like ultimately you are creating it to like so that somebody else will see it and enjoy it. But
Mm.
then I feel like we can get caught up in this idea of because you put out a clip and you think like, okay, well that got some good reaction. I'll do a little bit more of that and see if I can get a little bit more attention like that. But then there is eventually a going over the cliff part where you're like, hang on, what am I doing right now? That like this, it's you've heard the term flanderization before.
No, actually, but it reminds me of Ned Flanders, and I
Yeah,
can't
so
make it.
it's from
Is it
him.
that?
In the beginning of the show, Ned Flanders was just a nice guy who happened to be Christian. He was their neighbor, and that was all of his gimmick. But then by the middle of the show, that exaggerated characteristics of him, and he was this Jesus freak who was relentlessly religious, and that's the idea of flanderization is the over exaggeration of one aspect or a few aspects of a character until that becomes the only personality. And so it feels like flanderization a little bit because you think like, oh, that got a bit of attention. I'll do a little bit more of that. And then next thing you're really leaning into something that you sort of just came up with as a throwing it against the wall to see if it worked sort of thing. So it's I always feel like we're walking a tightrope as entertainers between on one side of the do you remember those old like those guys who would walk between two buildings and they'd have that stick, and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
one side
Tightrope
is like
walkers, yeah.
what we want to do and then the other side is like what other people want to see, and you're constantly trying to keep this balanced and not fall off the fall to your death below.
And I guess that's that active choice. And this is me getting into that. My obsession again, as you'll find out, is that very theoretical side. I'm so obsessed with the theory of things and thinking through things that sometimes it keeps me from practice. But the idea there being like, uh, you can make stuff for people. You can try to impress them, but one, they might, well, like in your case of if you make the same video over and over, they might be like, well, is this all he does at a certain point? Like you've attracted the people, they go, oh, cool, there's another video of that theme. But after a while, like, well, I guess that's all there is. And I've got my fill of that. I got my thing. So I'll go to something else. So the
Mm.
choice is if you do make what you want to make when you want to make it, you will lose people because there'll be people like, well, I don't want to see that new thing he's doing. I don't want to see that new whatever. Oh, that latest album, that latest comedy special. Yeah, it wasn't good as the last one. Yeah, I'm done. But that's a choice. You could either suffer and keep doing that same thing and burning out every day for maintaining the persona in the face, or go, no, I'm going to do what I want. I'm not going to have as immediate of that monetary ideally or whatever other hit it is, but it's a choice of what pain do you want. It life is pain.
Yeah, that's a fantastic quote. What kind of pain do you want? Because they often do say there's another expression of the pain of regret is much worse than the pain of failure, I think is the expression I heard. So yes, I think the other thing I wanted to touch on for the movie is the fact that he's created this island, Hawthorne. Well, I don't know if he created it as such, but it's his thing there. And the idea of having your dream, for lack of a better word, your Barbie dream house that you could, as so many comics I know have this kind of fantasy of like, I'd love to quit my day job because then I could just spend all day writing and I wouldn't have to worry about anything. But everyone that I know that's gone full time does not spend all day writing, myself included. There's too much other stuff to do. But there's this very appealing idea of like, if I could just have this perfect this perfect studio, or whatever it is. If you're a ballet dancer, the perfect ballet studio, the perfect my own little comedy club and podcast studio, whatever it is. We have this idea that like, what's that?
Yeah, it'll solve all my problems.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this movie actually sort of points out how that actually isolates Julian more from everything else, because like I've always said that as a comedian, it's very important to have people in your life that aren't in comedy, because they will remind you that you're not special, and they will roast you and bring you back to earth almost constantly. So you need that. Otherwise you fall out of touch with people. And then suddenly you're, unless your character is like, Ricky Gervais, I think does a little bit of like, I'm rich and so much better than you. But for the most part, you need to be relatable to a certain extent to the audience. And, you look at, so I think Amy Schumer was a good example. She had this like rocket ship of his success. But then I remember when her special came out after all of this, people were like, oh, she's not really talking about the stuff that I can experience anymore. And so they fell off. And yeah, that's one thing. I think Kevin Hart, maybe to an extent, experienced the same thing when now he's in his own kind of stratosphere, and it's not as it's not as relatable as it used to be.
Yeah, it's like, you just, I don't know why. I wonder what that is. I'm trying to like figure out what that idea is of why like we want other people to be exactly like us. Because I've always had this weird conflict that I've seen, especially in comedy, of like, don't brag about the things you do have or whatever, but also don't, because I don't want to feel bad, but also don't not talk about it because, like, let's say outside of the stage or whatever, because I want to have that dream that I could actually get places to. I want to see a light at the end of the tunnel. This very much was kind of my brother was a chef. And he kind of felt this the same. Like both of us kind of grew up with this idea that we can't ever brag about anything at all. Like we're worried about bragging, which a lot of people in this movie are not worried about bragging. Most of the people in the movie are very much okay with bragging at all times. And I think that's part of that people pleaser. So we'd like tamp down any kind of joy we had and like never mention if we went on a trip with the parents or anything, because we're always worried about like looking like braggers. But yet people would also be like, hey, well, I want to hear those stories because it makes me feel like there's hope out there, that there's something else. So it's like it's this weird balance. You start potentially doing a disservice if you don't talk about authentically you. So like Amy Schumer and all the others, it's an interesting case of, like you're doing that. I like you because you're like me. I don't like you anymore because I don't relate. But yet, why don't do people not want to see something else? Do they not want to have differing opinions? And I guess it's where everybody's different, where they're at in their life and like what's going on.
I think the one thing that I often have to remember, I have to remind myself about doing stand-up, is that most people live in the real world, and this comedy show that they're seeing is not actually that relevant or big of a deal to them. Like, I think, let's say you're the average person that was like watching Amy Schumer's old specials might have watched it and been like, wow, this is really cool. Like, she's talking about the same kind of stuff that I experience, like bad bosses and going to weddings and whatever it is or whatever. And then that's as much thought as they put into it when they're not actively watching it or whatever. And then they go to the seconds, after the fame, and she's talking about all these, she's name dropping celebrities and whatever. And it's just so far removed from this person's experience that they're kind of like, well, that's great for her, but I'm still here, on the tube every morning going into work. And so it just doesn't connect. Because, I mean, that's what stand-up is, is connecting with. It's like you're trying to form the audience into a singular organism, and then you're trying to connect with it. And so if the connection's not there, then they don't have any reason to buy in,
And I think that's that going back to that choosing your pain. It's like, well, you can then change your style. Like, I guess in Amy Schumer, I'm going to make a total assumption. she wanted to talk about something else and people didn't like it. Well, that's a choice you could make. You're like, well, I
Hmm.
might lose my fan base. I might lose all the movie spots I was getting at the time, but I'm going to do this. Otherwise, I'll burn out trying to be something I'm not. Because then that has its own problems if you try to act like you're something that you don't have. Because that's got that whole like, you're fake, you're fraud, you're whatever. So just, I don't know, be you.
Yeah.
Um, I also realized in the things you're saying, if you ever see me like smile or when we watch this back later, because in thinking about the movie and all the different obsessions, I'm like, oh wow, I'm ticking off so many of them at the same point. Of like you mentioned name dropping, I was like, oh yeah, Steven, oh yeah. So it's like all of those little. Oh, yeah, I've got shows too.
The
So it's
Stephen
like,
Lyons.
yeah, these, yeah. So it's like even within this one 40-minute conversation, or it's like how many of those can I tick off at once? Like
Yeah.
talking about fame and getting that. We're talking about like fanboyism,
Yeah.
being accepted, perfectionism, like studying way too much about thinking way too much about the philosophy of all of this instead of just doing things.
But I think that's why it's such a fascinating movie, is because it, on the surface, it seems like a fairly indie sort of, oh, he's a crazy chef who's going to kill everybody. But then when you dig a little deeper, there's so many aspects of the human condition sort of captured in a lot of the characters. And it's quite interesting because none of the characters are really that likable,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Like I think Anna Taylor-Joy's character is, she's our window into that world because she's
Mm.
working class and she's not a foodie at all, or she's not even interested in the world of food. Like, well, spoilers, she's a prostitute who's brought along by Nicholas Holt's character, who is like a massive fanboy of Julian Slowik. But the rest of the characters are all kind of, what I think is so fascinating about them is you do like them in their own way, but they're unequivocally bad people.
Mm.
And I don't know, it's just nice to see people, flawed people, like they're doing their thing. They're unapologetically them, I think, is what I quite like about them.
Actually, so on that note, I'm going to see if this works, Taylor. As I mentioned to you before, I want to play a game. I'm
Okay.
going to see if I can put on. Sharing's not turned on, so I can't do it. I'll save it for the comments and social media posts later. Basically, I was going to play a game of like, which character are you? I had them all up on the side, but since you might remember what they are,
Yeah, I remember all the characters. Yeah.
which one feel or which maybe combination, kind of like you were playing the game, like what friend's character are you like on Facebook?
Yeah.
What characters do you identify most with? Because like you
Oh,
said, they're all got flaws, but we all have flaws.
yes. Okay. So the ones I think I identified the most with is there's a character who's played by oh geez, what is his name? He is a
John Leguizamo, I'm gonna guess.
yes. John Luke, say it again.
John Leguizamo. Oh
Leguizamo.
no, I had to say it twice and I messed it up.
So
John Leguizamo.
so
Yeah.
he's one of my favorite actors just in general, so I like him. But I love that his character is this burnt out movie star who I've been trying to think about who the equivalent of who, like, what is he an XP of a real life character? Because part of his
Actually,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, if we compare it back to comedy, I would almost compare it to without like there's no names, but just like the people who just keep doing the same sets that they're so tired of doing. They're like, yeah, well, I had a spot and I just filled it, but there's like the whole passion with the chef. It's like there's no love in it. Because what Chef was mad at him about is like, you didn't put any love into your movies. And I had one night off to go see a show, a movie in this case, and you ruined it because you had no love in your set.
That's
So it's like
right.
it could be a generic comic who's just kind of like, I'm just, yeah, I got my 10 minutes again, and I'm just gonna do the same thing the same joke that I haven't bothered to improve in 10 years.
Yes, I think you're onto it there. The but the reason I sort of identify with them is because I find that idea of people that have gotten a 15 minutes of fame and trying desperately to leverage that for as long as possible. I find that both hilarious and fascinating. Like, I was a big fan of Jason David Frank, who was the former Green Power Ranger.
Okay.
So unfortunately, did pass away a couple of years ago, so rest in peace. But he rode that Power Rangers thing right until the wheels came off. Like, if you go to his Instagram or went to his Instagram, everything was like something green something or Dragon Zord and Green Power Rangers. And he basically made his living teaching martial arts and going to like Comic-Con around the world as because he was the Green Power Ranger. And I just thought that's a fascinating life. You know, this one
Do you
thing.
think he loved it? Do you think he loved it, or do you think he did it just for like paychecks and fame?
So, trigger warning, he did take his own life. So I'm going to
Oh,
say he did not enjoy that life.
mm.
But I don't know. At the same time, it, it's I have a lot of mixed feelings on this kind of like people trying to, people leveraging a role they did 20 years ago into a career or to make a living is fascinating because I think it's part of a little bit of living vicariously. Like I would have loved to have done at least one thing that people still resonate with 20 years later. So I don't see it as a bad thing or a shameful thing as such. I just find it interesting in all the ways they try to dodge around copyright and sort of sell merch that's like, you know what I'm talking about, but it's not, it's legally, it's different enough that I can sell it and make money off it. And again, a podcast for another day. I just noticed we had the 10-minute Zoom warning come up. So is there anything else you want to cover about this movie and about the arts before we wrap up?
I think, well, one part, I was just going to celebrate a few moments from the movie if you want.
Please.
Just because like there's a few things that I loved, in particular, the second line of the movie is Margot Mills, Anya Taylor-Joy. Basically the setup was she's starting to light a cigarette and Nicholas Holt's fanboy Tyler character was like, you can't have that. So just no, you can't because you'll ruin things because that's his perception. That's kind of a bit what I am. And that idea of like, no, you can't do stand up that way because you're not doing it right because it's the theory. And she's like, well, I'll write it down.
She says her taste buds will die happy.
Yeah, so yeah, my palate will die happy. That's it's like right from the beginning, you're just like, she's like, I'm okay with this. I'm okay not having it perfect. I'm okay with my choices and my pain is going to be, the food won't taste as good. I don't really care anyway, so it's fine. I love that. Do you have any favorite lines from the movie?
Oh, so the one line that hit me very hard because I think this is a fear a lot of performers have, but do you remember when the chef, who's like the sous chef, shoots himself in the head and
Jeremy's mess or something like that? I think
So Julian Slowik says to him, he's like, what's his name? Jeremy. He's like, Jeremy's good, but he'll never be great. Yeah. And you can see that it's obviously tearing Jeremy up that he's not a great chef. And I think, because this is what I feel conflicted about, because on one hand, we would think like, man, I'd love to be considered great at our art form, whatever. But then Julian keeps saying to him, do you want my life, Jeremy? And Jeremy says no. And so the point is that we're looking at all of the sacrifices that Chef has had to make to get to his position. And even still, his second in command does not want to be him.
Well, because I was wondering, like the way you just said that, made me think about it differently. Because is there a chance that Jeremy in this case wanted like the status in that kind of like the chef position, but didn't actually want to do the work for it? And it's a slightly alternative angle. I don't think that's the intent, but it made me think about that the way you said it, in that like, do you want my life? You know, all the work I've put in, kind of like, you see a big comic on Netflix and you're like, wow, they've done all the work, but we're just like hoping for that fast track. All of us are like, oh, I hope at the next open mic or whatever, somebody's going to be there and they're going to see me and they're going to give me that next beautiful hour spot and my life's going to be great. And I've never got to do social media again. When really it's like, you're going to have to do all that work to get the thing. You have to do the work to get the results. Exactly. You might get lucky, but you can't bank on that. So I just had a tweak of that to wonder, was Jeremy like, I want your position, but I don't want to do the work. And so I accept that, but I don't think that was the meaning. I
think you're on the right track, but I think it was less that he wasn't willing to do the work and more that he wasn't willing to sacrifice everything that Julian has sacrificed by living on the island. And obviously he doesn't really seem to have any friends or close connections. There's a bit where talking about how he tried to sleep with one of his staff and she rejected him. So, he's doesn't seem to have any kind of friendships or romantic relationships. His mother's there, so I don't know if she lives there full time or not, but he says like 10 words to her in the whole movie, so I don't know what their relationship is like. But that was my feeling, is that he was kind of asking Jeffrey like, greatness is good, but look at all you have to do to actually get there, and is it worth it?
Yeah, and like look at all of the I kind of go back to that fraud idea. Like, look at all these people trying to please each other, but nobody's actually connecting. Nobody's actually like talking to each other. They're just like chatting away in the green room, if you will, of the kitchen. And like, but there's no actual connections there. Now, I'm not saying that's the case here. But in some circles, it definitely has been.
Yeah.
So
The,
yeah, but
I think there was one scene where they connect, and it's where that young woman, do you remember they let all the guys run, and then
yeah,
all the ladies kind of go back inside, and they're
yeah.
sitting around smoking at the table, and
They're just
they're
like,
sort
fine,
of
pour the wine, we're gonna die.
they're
Yeah,
sort of commiserating, and in that scene, I felt like they're all sort of connecting, and they're all kind of human again. And but I think you're right, yeah.
yeah.
For the
Because what it
most part,
was
they're not
they
connecting
were
yet.
trying. Lillian, the critic, was trying to play that angle of like winning over the female chef, and then she's like, "Well, you're still gonna die," and that's why they're
Yeah,
like, "Ah, screw it, just
yeah.
like let's like low." And it's like, wow, it took that long to like lower your facade and just be a human for a minute. It took
Mm,
that long.
mm.
What actually, I do got a question for you because you probably analyzed it and thought about it way better than I ever have. At the end, again, spoilers, but we've been going into it. At the end, if Chef gets to have his pure joy of making this cheeseburger, and it's this thing that it's like his life mission's going back, he's fulfilled again. I kept feeling like, why does the rest of the staff still feel like they need to follow through at this point? Because it feels like it's almost like he's betrayed that, like, the whole purpose was we're all flawed and done this. And he finds this moment of like happiness, but yet, I don't know, it bugged me for a second. I just wrote
I do have a
yeah.
response to that actually. I think had that happened to him on any other day, he would have realized, oh wow, okay, this is what I needed to be doing, and he would have quit his job, and he would have like, have you seen the movie Chef? You know, he's working in a food truck just selling like
Yeah.
Cubano sandwiches or whatever. I think that would have been Julian's life, as he would have gone to that, but it was too little, too late. And, you know, by that point, they're just about to kill everyone. So I think in his mind, it was like, well, I've come this far. Like, you know, it's over regardless. So
Yeah.
I might as well finish my final course thing. So I think had someone like Margot been in there any other day for normal service and like sort of done, because she's the only one that kind of stands up to him and tells him that he's not this godlike figure, you know, God's last gift to cooking kind of thing. And like that in a way sort of brings him back to being human again. And yeah, but I think because it happened on the last day, it was just too late for him to change his ways by that point.
Yeah, it's kind of like that was like she actually flipped him. Like it's like the one character that was redeemed because she was redeemed all along, but it's kind of he was the one person who kind of got this redemption moment at the end. Still went through with it. Still objectively a bad person, if you will.
Yeah,
Just a bad,
if you want to
naughty
look
person.
at it that way, yeah. Morality.
Yeah.
Who am I to judge?
Yeah. So I guess the biggest thought that I keep going away with, it is not going to be answered in our minute left or however long it is, but it's in that thinking, encouraging people to always think more like, what is driving you? Like in whatever you're doing, what like we're doing this, we're trying to make other content, we're trying to do stand up and improv and work and live and all of these other things. Like, what is driving us? And are we conscious of the choices that we're making every day? And again, this is like the deep part. It's not like comedy podcast. I can talk funny if we need to lighten it up, but it is like, yeah, why are people doing what they're doing? How often do people check in with that? Or do they find themselves like Chef? You're like, it's been 20 years and I didn't realize and stop to like really think about why am I doing this? What do I want out of this?